Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney, along with Nick Zararis. And Nick, the Rangers avoided arbitration with Ryan Lindgren. He now has a new one-year deal, $4.5 million. And barring any surprises, this is the 2024-25 Rangers roster until about the trade deadline.
I think there might be a PTO candidate or two in the mix.
Maybe.
I think that's something that might be a worthwhile proposition. We know this is an organization that's been very reticent to give young guys opportunities, especially to start the season. If anything, it's been the mid-season call-ups who have generally stuck, like Will Cooley making it an entire season. Genuinely impressive. I don't think we give him enough credit for having a game simple enough that the coaching staff couldn't find a way to take him out for no real reason. Like we have seen Rangers coaching staffs, many over the last 15 to 20 years do, where even if a guy's playing well, he's young, he's got to learn. Well, wouldn't he benefit from learning from playing as opposed to eating some Madison Square Garden popcorn sitting in the same row as Larry and Molly? I don't understand at a certain level, but yeah, that's the main topic of conversation for today. But because I think it opens two paths. I think either A, he entirely walks next year and is gone completely. I think that is the most likely proposition as of this moment, because I think the Rangers understand that this is one of the cost casualty guys. This is not somebody that is irreplaceable. Yep. This is not somebody who is dynamic, explosive, or has untapped potential. I think Ryan Lindgren has achieved a lot more than anybody really ever thought he was probably going to. I vividly remember the morning they traded Rick Nash to the Bruins and got him back in the trade. There was a lot of kvetching that Ryan Lindgren was the return because he was small. He wasn't that good of a skater. I watched him in college a couple games, actually, because I went to a Penn State, Minnesota game, and I was like, this is the guy they traded for? And he just looked slow at the college level, but very slowly but surely worked his way up, spent half a season in Hartford, came up for 5 games, which is why that record that everybody cites for games played with and without Ryan Lindgren is incorrect, because they used the second half of that season where he went back down after that as part of calculating that record. But he's a solid player. The problem is you reach a point in a player's contract life cycle where their production is not worthy of their cap hit. And it's not Ryan Lindgren's fault, the way the economics of hockey are set up, where you don't get to make decent money until you're 26 or 27 years old. But very clearly, that's the deal here. Ryan Lindgren is going to be a cost casualty of maintaining the core group of Zibanejad, Fox, Panarin, Trocheck, Shesterkin, K-Andre Miller, etc. And that's not a knock on Ryan Lindgren. It's just those other guys are more important. And if there was a way to make this work, I think it's the Scott Mayfield deal. I think if the Rangers really wanted to keep Lindgren, they would have done the Scott Mayfield 7 years, $3 million per. And yeah, it wouldn't look great 3 or 4 years from now. But if they really wanted him long term, they absolutely could have done it.
Yeah, and I think this is the best case scenario for the Rangers long term, because after a year, Ryan Lindgren, I would have to imagine, is going to walk. I don't see the Rangers giving him the money that I would think that he wants. If anything, they might give him less than 4.5. I mean, given how he plays, this is great for the Rangers because it keeps him for one more year. It keeps him. They like him next to Fox for reasons. I wish I could tell you what they were, but they have their reasons, and it's great because it's not a 7-year contract. It's not this 6-year. Even if you wanted to go 6 years and 5.5, for example, that's still an atrocious contract for the Rangers to have on their books because of the way he plays. And again, we talked about this week in and week out with Ryan Lindgren, where we respect the way he plays. He's a very hard-nosed kind of player. He's giving his body out on the line, a very heart and soul kind of guy in the locker room. And, he's a warrior on the ice. He bleeds every single game from the face or from wherever. My man's is always getting medical attention on the bench, and he's back out there in the next shift. Those are the kinds of players that, are few and far between. And when you have somebody like that, it's definitely a boost to morale on the bench. But when you play a game like that, you slow down rapidly. You are a type of player that breaks down easier because of the way you throw your body around, because you're blocking so many shots, because you're laying your body out on the line every shift, every play, your body cannot handle that long term. So the fact that the Rangers did the correct thing and they assessed the situation and said, okay, we really like Ryan Lindgren, but we cannot feasibly keep him long term if we want to keep everybody else. We're going to give him a 1-year deal. He's going to walk the free agency, and then we'll see. If he wants too much money, we'll replace him. If he wants, a cheap deal, maybe they can figure something out. I don't know. But overall, this is great for both sides too, because Ryan Lindgren is going to get paid next year. My man's is going to get paid by somebody.
To a bad team to get paid, but that's the nature
somebody.
Of free agency.
He's going to get paid by somebody. It's just a matter of who it is. And for the Rangers to decide now that they probably aren't going to be that team is great.
It helps for keeping the main components of the team together. The drawback of that, of course, is we're all kind of unanimously in agreement that the core of this group is not good enough. That's kind of the conundrum here, that the Rangers are moving heaven and earth to keep the same 7 or 8 guys that have come up short a few separate times now. And they don't have the utmost flexibility next year because they have to figure out Miller, they have to figure out Shesterkin, they have to figure out Lafreniere. Once you figure out that, then you'll be able to kind of, calculate, whatever word you want to use to describe it. That'll be the foundation of the team building out going forward into the near future. I jokingly referred to this as the Ryan Lindgren last dance because they're not trading him in season. That's because
it is.
They're not trading him in season. As much as people are like, well, they signed him so that maybe they're not trading him.
No.
The Rangers are not the type of team that's going to make a player for player trade in season because they value their own guys too much. We have seen historically that the Rangers think their guys are worth a lot more, whether it's Kakko right now, whether it's some of their prospects they've been unwilling to part with in trades, maybe it's Othman in regards to Jake Gensel, maybe Perreault in regards to Jake Gensel, etc. Whether it's me thinking Mika Zibanejad is better than Jack Eichel, we know that the Rangers have they have the same conundrum that their fan base does, that the fans think the players are, because they're on the team, they're better than they are. And because of that, it's hard to get a real understanding of what the front office thinks about things. And that's partly because there's just not enough information. We don't get well-sourced reporting from inside the front office because the front office plays everything very close to the vest. And then number 2, they do things that are just kind of like, I don't want to say illogical, but they do things with a very specific mindset of, we are trying to do this. And that's it. There's no room. There's no leeway. It's, we need to get tougher. So we go overboard and we bring in 5 guys. It's, we need more experience. So we replace Brian Strome with Vincent Trocheck. It's, we need more oomph. So we go get stars at the rental stars at the deadline. This past year, it was, well, we don't have any money, so we're going to go to the bargain bin. This year, it's, we have no money. We still have to go to the bargain bin. We'll take a dart on Riley Smith, and we'll hope that Zach Jones can be 70% of what Eric Gustafsson was last year. And with that in mind, it's hard not to feel kind of bleh about where they're at right now. And that's not to say vibes can't change. Last year's Rangers team probably had the best vibes of any team in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But when you look at this group, it's very clear that door is closing. We talk about sliding doors moments where one door opens, one door closes. That's where we're at right now. This is your sliding doors moment of either they are going down this path or they are going down this path. We can go back. We can draw direct parallels to 2014 and 2015, where they could have traded Dan Girardi, they could have traded Mark Stahl, and instead they brought them both back and they brought in Dan Boyle as opposed to keeping Anton Strawman, and that was their sliding doors moment. The Rangers don't quite have that direct because these are restricted free agents in regards to a lot of the guys we're talking about right now, but their sliding doors moment was, I hate to say it, but like, it's 2 years ago. It's bringing in Trocheck. That's bringing in Barclay Goodrow. When Drury took over, the Rangers had like $30 million in cap space. They had all of these guys on entry-level contracts, Miller and Schneider and Shesterkin and Lafreniere and Kakko. And they immediately got to work burning all of that money on a Zibanejad extension, a Fox extension, all of the free agents they acquired over the last year and over the last 3 years, all of the trade guys they traded for and signed, like Dro and Reeves. They burned $20 million in cap space, arguably didn't make the team better, and only got better because the guys they already had developed. And because of that, they're sitting here with minimal cap space, and we're basically beholden to the NHL's revenue, where unless the cap makes a big leap, and we're roughly estimating 92 million for next summer, which would be about 4 million from where they're at right now. That's where we're at with the Rangers. Like, a lot of people have said, I think you're being too pessimistic in regards to a Shesterkin extension. I don't necessarily think a Shesterkin extension is prohibitive for the Rangers eventually winning a Stanley Cup. I think it's going to make it a lot harder.
Sure.
I think it's going to make it a lot harder. And maybe the cap goes 93, 94, but still, that's not a big, that when we're talking about 15, 14% of the entire salary cap on one player, and then you throw in Zibanejad, and you throw in Panarin, and Fox, and Trocheck, and you're almost at 55% of the cap for 5 guys on a group that hasn't even been close, really. You're basically the Leafs, but instead of Mitch Marner, you have a goalie. Like, that's kind of the trade-off.
Well, the Rangers actually win rounds, so that's a little bit different. But like, I think that the conversation that a lot of fans don't want to have, and this is why part of the reason why we have this show is because we are honest about the situation where the Rangers are going to make the playoffs.
They're going to be
the
good.
The Rangers are going to be a good team. They're going to win a bunch of games. The vibes, in January or whatever, are going to be good because they're winning. Do you want to win in the regular season, or do you want to win the Stanley Cup? These are two different conversations that we have to have. Because, again, when the Rangers, it's really difficult to replicate last season's success because they broke records. It's really difficult when you have a 98-year-old franchise and you just broke the record for most successful regular season ever. It's tough to go over that, right? So you're going to regress a little bit. That's to be expected. But I would rather, and we've said it on shows before, I would rather them lose 5 more games in December and January and then win the Stanley Cup than win 82 games, and then come April and then they lay an egg. Like, the conversation that Rangers fans,
I don't think laying an egg is fair. I think it's that they're not built for the playoffs.
Well,
I'm
not saying they're going to lay an egg. I'm saying, like, I would rather them, lose a little bit more and then go deeper than win every single game in the regular season and then just kind of flail out it early on. Like, the conversation that that we're having right now and more fans should be having is, can this team, as currently constructed, win the Stanley Cup? I don't care about the game on February 18th, 2025. If I don't even know if there's a game, I'm just making things up. But like, that matters in a day-to-day sense. But when you zoom out and say, does this one game matter more than another game? Not necessarily, but does game 6 of the conference final matter more than that February game? Of course it does. So is this team capable of winning that game 6 in the conference finals and forcing a game 7 or moving on to the cup final? That's the ultimate question. The fact that they're going to win 48, 49, 50, 52 games in the regular season, that's all fine and dandy. But ultimately, the conversation is, come game 1 of the playoffs, is this team ready? Is this team built to go all the way?
I think that's too simple, because yes, anybody's going to make that trade of the regular season versus the playoffs. And I think the reason I'm more pessimistic is we have seen the Rangers be a good regular season team consistently over the last 15 years. Second most playoff series wins of anybody over the last 15 years to not win the Stanley Cup, aside from the Sharks. They are consistently amongst, first, second, or third in the Metropolitan Division. They've won multiple playoff series in relatively recent history, and they've done it with multiple iterations, multiple permutations of the team. But the way they are constructed, and when I say constructed, I mean the guys they have, this is not breaking news. They are well conditioned for regular season hockey. They are really good at picking apart bad teams. They are really good at running and gunning
when they want to.
When they want to get going.
When they want to do
Andrew,
that,
they won 54 games last year. Yes, they are good at that.
No. I mean, beating up on bad teams.
They, for the most part, and every game. That's why you can't think about hockey like football.
Yeah.
Because the season is a lot longer, and there are going to be a lot longer runs of highs and lows. It's the same thing with baseball. You can't think about baseball like football. The season is too long. Because the season is so long, you're going to have ebbs and flows. It's just when you're good like the Rangers were last year, the dips were a lot smaller. 8 games from the end of January to early February was the low point of the season. They went like 4-1-2, something like that, and then Connor Mackey saved the season against Ottawa. That's kind of the way. That's the way
That's
it works.
the lore.
And the way a long season goes, that's the type of stuff that it takes. But the problem is the Rangers have put stock in their own guys that they think are capable. And the way the playoffs ended this year and the immediate bursting narrative coming out was this group probably isn't good enough. And well, if it's not good enough, that means we need to change things. And then very quickly, the general manager realized, oh, it's hard to change things. So that's kind of why I understand. And I've seen a reasonable pocket of people being optimistic that, hey, Riley Smith's better than Blake Wheeler. And if Capo Kakko stays, they could have a really nice functional third line with Kakko, Cooley, and Hedl. Or maybe it's Brennan Othman in that spot as opposed to Kakko. And they turn Kakko into something else. And I understand the cause for optimism. And I think the issue we're coming to in this specific conversation is a lot of people, me included, are kind of at the point now where it's, if you don't win a Stanley Cup, the regular season's nice, but at this point, that's all I want. 55 wins, a great regular season, an individual award or two, Shesterkin wins a Vezina, or Fox wins a Norris, or Panarin wins a Hart. Great. That stuff's memorable. You'll talk about it the rest of your life. We'll talk about the Barclay Goodrow Linsanity run. We'll talk about about the Chris Kreider hat trick in Game 6 against Carolina. We'll talk about the Stadium Series. We will talk about all of these things probably for the rest of our natural-born lives. But if it doesn't manifest in a Stanley Cup at this point,
it doesn't matter.
It really doesn't matter. And that's not to say it's a failure, because making a conference final does not make the season a failure.
Right.
But the goal at this point, the general manager has managed the team for 3 straight seasons of, we can win the Stanley Cup, we can win the Stanley Cup. And they have burned draft picks. They have burned cap space. They are at a point where if they do not win the Stanley Cup, you're going to start asking questions. I was very surprised. I don't know if you saw it or not, but there was a poll of sports media people in the New York area, and they had Drury ranked as the 4th best GM in the New York metro area, I was a little surprised to see. I understand some of them are very short into their tenures. Like the Mets GM is very new. The Giants general manager is very new. So it's kind of hard to rank them fairly.
It's tough to beat Leon Rose, in fairness.
Rose, he was first, to be fair.
Yeah,
he was, and deservedly so. I mean,
he's been incredible. As a sad, depressed Knicks fan of 27 years, it has been, the last couple of years have been a lot of fun.
They pulled the team out of their ass.
Thank you, Leon Rose.
They waited, they bided their time, they committed a little tampering. Can the Rangers commit a little tampering? Can we get somebody's dad on the coaching staff and get them to be
that's how they got Adam Fox.
Well, his dad doesn't work for the Rangers. His dad's just a dude from Long Beach.
Yeah, but he made Adam say no to Carolina and to Calgary. I think to Nashville as well. Or is that Jimmy? That's
Jimmy Vesey. Jimmy Vesey was Nashville.
Yeah, my man. Yeah, he made Adam be like, no. Yeah, he's got to be a Ranger. Like that's as close to tampering as you're going to get in the NHL.
We need Panarin to get like Kucherov. That's what we need. I need Shesterkin to get Kucherov on the Rangers. Or that's what. Hey man, that was the bang in the drum for Chris Knobloch last summer. Was maybe we can back channel to Connor McDavid, and then the Oilers hired his agent to be the president of the team, which is as tampering can get. But nevertheless, it sucks because
he took that team to a Game 7 of the Cup final.
That team's not bad by any stretch.
No, it's not bad, but is it Game 7 of a Cup final worthy?
Yeah, it's close enough. That's the thing. It's about the margins, and the Rangers build their team for the margins. They think they're in every game, and they are, but it's only because of like 4 guys. That's the issue, I was workshopping this take earlier in the summer when the Oilers were still going on, and I was going to say that if the Oilers were able to win the Stanley Cup, paying Darnell Nurse, Cody Ceci, and Evander Kane $20 million combined, it would be the most impressive thing of the Stanley Cup era, of the cap era. Because to burn $20 million on 3 actively bad players, it's the same thing. If the Rangers were able to get to a Stanley Cup burning $12 million on Trouba and Gaudreau alone, that's really impressive when you have net negatives taking up that much of your cap and you're still good. And that gets to the thing that irks me. I hate when people do if you like the team, why are you complaining? Because the team's good in spite of the bad players. If you had good players
Right.
in the place of the bad players, the
It's
team could be even better.
It's just the meme of we should improve society somewhat. Oh, but you participated in it. Curious. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, we want to make it better.
Yes.
There are issues with this roster that would behoove the team to make better so that they can play better and so that we would shut up about it and so we can stop complaining about it because these are net negatives that are for some reason aren't going anywhere. So, yeah, we're fans and we want the team to perform well. That's why we highlight the negatives so that they can fix the. I mean, I don't know if they, I don't know if Drury's listening to the conversation right now, but like the point is like we're highlighting the.
Put us on retainer, $55,000 a year. No,
right.
Don't do that. I will save you a lot of money.
Just pay us to
I could have told you not to sign Patrick Nemeth. They tried. Cale McCarr couldn't drag Patrick Nemeth, and you were going to ask Check's Notes Nils Lundqvist to drag Patrick Nemeth.
Yeah.
So every now and then I'm not saying I'd be good. I'm just saying I would not be.
I wouldn't be the worst.
I would not be Chuck Fletcher. I could have told Stan Bowman, hey,
New Jersey Devils legend now, Chuck Fletcher.
I would have told Stan Bowman, hey, don't trade 2 first-round picks and Adam Boquist for Seth Jones and reset the market for defensemen all in one move to finish 6th in the Central. Just maybe a grown adult in the room at some point to be like, hey, this isn't a good idea. Some teams are better at that than others of avoiding the fatal mistakes. And that's the one good thing here. And maybe there's a world where Ryan Lindgren bounces back. And then we have to have a very uncomfortable conversation next summer. Because if he has a good season going into a walk year, the narrative machine is going to be gross. The narrative machine of you can't let him go. He had a terrible season and bounced back. He came back. He stayed healthy. He was instrumental in whatever when it comes to Adam Fox. Because no matter what, whenever you're the Norris caliber defenseman, your partner always gets pumped up crazy. Like, look at the deal the Canucks gave Philip Roenick. And I'm not saying Philip Roenick is bad. Philip Roenick is not worth the money the Canucks are paying him. And that's the benefit when you're that guy. You ride shotgun with a great player, everybody thinks you're good. Like I forget whose mailbag it was, if it was Peter Ball's or Staples in The Athletic about the Rangers. And they said, well, Ryan Lindgren's a great competitor and he's tenacious on puck battles. Well, does he actually win the puck? Does he get the puck where it needs to go?
Well, that's the conversation that people don't want to have. Like that's the most annoying thing about all of this, really, is people will see some of the story or some of the picture, but they just won't look at the other parts of it. Like, yeah, that's great that he is a competitor, but is he actually doing anything with that competitiveness? Like, it's awesome, right? That he has the willingness.
Scrappy dude. He's competitive. He's trying to fight, but they're putting his head on his hand.
It's great that he's scrappy and that he's a warrior and he's this and he's willing to get into the dirt. That's great. But after it's all said and done, who has the puck? Who won the battle most of the time? It's not Lindgren.
And it's not just that he doesn't win the puck. It's because he's a retriever. That is his skill set. He turns his back around, he goes and gets the puck, and he has to get it to Adam Fox. He is not that fast. When he gets pressured, he's liable to turn the puck over.
He doesn't know what to do with the puck. Like it's a hot potato with him. And that's like it's I'm always interested to see defensemen that are so immobilized when they have the puck on their stick or when they're expecting the puck on their stick, really. And I think that that's something that is going to decrease as we move forward in an era of hockey where everybody is involved in offense all of the time, where we've seen the offensive defensemen and we've seen all, but as future generations where I think hockey will eventually be closer to positionless, you will not see nearly as many people terrified of handling the puck as we see in the current era because there are set roles.
I think with time, yes, you're watching that happen. I was talking about it with somebody the other day, just how much better the average hockey player is today than they were 10 years ago. You go look at the Lightning and Blackhawks roster from that 2015 Cup final versus what the Cup final teams were this year. Brad Richards was the second line center on that Blackhawks team that won the Stanley Cup. 33-year-old Brad Richards, who was bought out the year before, was a second line center on a team that won the Stanley Cup. And then you compare that to Florida, who's like, yeah, we could play Kachuk and Barkov together, but we don't need to, so we're not going to. And you very quickly start to understand how many levels there are to this game. You look at the defense, and I'll keep banging this drum. I've been banging this drum for 3.5 years. I probably will keep banging this drum till I die. Until the Rangers figure out where defense is going in the modern NHL, they would continue to have shortcomings. Let me ask you this. One of the questions in that mailbag was, what do you think is the Rangers' biggest weakness? And again, I forget if it was Staple or Boss said, I think the star player's inability to score consistently. And I understand that mindset. I still think it's the defense. The Rangers didn't have a single functional defenseman in that conference final against Florida. Fox was compromised physically. Miller and Trouba were not comfortable. Schneider was fine. Like, I think if you're going into a conference final and the most consistent defenseman you had was Braden Schneider, I don't think that's a good omen. And Lindgren is not getting any younger. Miller, as we've discussed a lot this summer, the inconsistencies eventually need to either metastasize into something, or he's just a question mark indefinitely. Gustafsson was, a placeholder very clearly because they didn't put serious effort into bringing him back. I think until the Rangers really overhaul this defense, I don't think they're going to be able to hang. And the reason I say that, if you go look at the distribution of defensemen with forwards, you very quickly can start to understand why Zibanejad and Kreider don't have the puck as much, why Cooley, Kakko, and in this case, Wenberg did not have the puck as much, because they were playing with Miller and Trouba and playing with Gustafsson and Schneider.
I think the answer is ultimately the defensive porousness, but I do think the forward group's inability to produce consistent offense is closer to number one than maybe people realize, because ultimately the Edmonton Oilers brought out Darnell Nurse and Cody Ceci, and because Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl were so much better, it almost ended up not mattering. They lost 2-1, so ultimately they were 2 goals away, I guess, from winning the game. But they were 2 goals away from having 2 of the worst defensemen on the planet on their team and still winning because of how transcendent their offensive talent was. So while the defense is a massive problem, Ryan Lindgren, as we talked about, can't handle the puck. He thinks it's a ticking time bomb. I don't know why he's so afraid to handle it. When Adam Fox gets injured, as we saw in the playoffs, okay, well, who's taking over at least some of the roles that he manages by himself? The answer right now is nobody. Hopefully, maybe Keandre Miller or Zach Jones can do it, but as of right, or maybe Braden Schneider, but as of right now, it's kind of just Adam Fox. So the defense is a big problem when you take a look at long-term puck handling ability, how they can retrieve pucks and get it out of their zone. The transition game defensively isn't there, but at the same time, again, if Zibanejad can't say, you know what, I'm gonna go do it myself. If Kreider did it against Carolina, but we can't rely on that to happen more than once in a blue moon. There aren't enough forwards on this team that are saying to themselves, "Oh, we're down a goal. All right,
but I think that's
my job.
I think that's a very high bar. I think there's a handful of guys on the planet who can do that.
It is a very high bar. But the thing about the high bar is that take a look at the past Stanley Cup winners. All of them had at least one guy that said, that was the screw it, I'll do it myself guy. They all had those guys. Rangers offensively, as of right now, don't have that guy.
I think when you're a team like the Rangers and you don't have one of those guys, and we're talking about maybe 7 people on the planet here.
Yeah.
We're talking about McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon. If you want to, it depends which winger you like, whether you want Rantanen or Kucherov or Dries, whoever. We're talking about a very small group here. This is not like but this team, that team. We're talking about maybe 10 guys on the planet as far as forwards who can just say, I'll do it myself, And because the Rangers don't have one of those guys, they have to have more of a piecemeal group approach to this. Yeah. And because the defense can't supplement the offense, it forces the forwards to do more on an individual basis. And because of that, their weaknesses are more glaring. The fact that it's one more pass than a shot on goal. The fact that Kreider will just dip his shoulders when he loses a puck battle and not get back on defense. You start to notice those glaring things when you watch other teams. And Florida's a bit different because of the way they approach building their roster, where yes, they have the really good high-end talent, but pretty much everybody was pretty well committed to that style of play where it's 5 guys in the frame. We are forechecking aggressively. We play really good team defense. And that's kind of the bridge here. If the Rangers can't get one of those 7 guys, they need to have that utmost commitment to team play. And when the Rangers were at their best this past season, they had that. They had all 5 guys in the frame on a regroup breaking out of the zone with speed. They were able to cycle the puck for prolonged periods of time in the offensive zone and wear out the other team. Or on the power play, be able to move the puck around enough to force the other team to overcommit to a side, which sets up the quality scoring chance. And some of that ultimately comes down to discipline. It comes down to a mindset. And we have repeatedly seen when the Rangers get into those adversity-filled situations that their structures break down, that they don't fall back on their structure, which is the entire point. The reason you have structure, the reason you have scheme is so that when shit hits the fan, oh, I don't even need to think. I have done this 800,000 times since the second week of September.
They fell on bad habits.
They do. Ultimately, yeah, they fall back on these bad habits of, okay, we can't make this play happen. I'm just going to skate the puck. I'm going to skate the puck. And that's where the offense dies. And it's not just this iteration. It's not just 2021, 2022. This was the same thing in 2015 against Tampa Bay, where they kept skating the puck into the neutral zone and meeting 3 Tampa Bay defenders and saying, oh, I can't go through them, dumping the puck in, not following up to go and get it. And ultimately, I think the big flaw with the forward group, and this is not news, I have said this a lot, they have a lot of redundant skill sets. They do not have guys who play a wide range of styles. The closest we got to that was that third line for a good stretch of the regular season. With Wenberg, Kakko, and Cooley, they didn't put the puck in the net, which is why the average person looked at them and was complaining. They got zone time. They made the other team play defense. And that was really a weakness of the Zibanejad line and the Panarin line in the playoffs the longer they went on, was they would get the zone, 1 shot on goal, and then have to come back and play defense. You need a diversity of style. And I'll wrap up this tangent with this thought. The Oilers, who have 2 of the 10 best forwards in the world, could not beat the Panthers playing the way the Rangers are trying to play.
Yep.
The Rangers do not have 2 of the 10 best players in the world in their forward group. They might in Fox and Shesterkin, but if your 2 best players are a goalie and a defenseman, you are not going to be able to do that, I'll do it myself type mentality. And as good as Adam Fox is, as good as Igor Shesterkin is, without that S-tier forward, and Panarin had an S-tier forward regular season, but very clearly his game, again, did not translate to the playoff environment. And I know his line was still their best line in the playoffs. Lafreniere and Trocheck had really good postseasons. Panarin's counter stats weren't great, but he was on that line. He was drawing attention. So there are levels to this. It's a complicated subject, and there is no one answer. And I think because of that, the Rangers feel like they're close, and they have felt like they've been close for the last 3 years. It's why, even though they probably could have, they didn't jettison Trouba. It's probably why they're going to run it back one last time with this group, and they're going to look and see what happens. And they are well within that upper 10-team echelon where, getting off the bus first night of the season, they are one of the 10 best teams in the NHL. Can they get to the best team in the NHL? That'll be the incumbent upon the players to improve if they can, or the guys they bring in over the course of the season.
I understand that chemistry is a big part of just sports in general, right? Like if you can keep the same core that has gotten close to glory for a number of years, and you tinker within the margins and you try to see if that core can do it again and go back and maybe win it this time. I get all that. But when it's the same core that has shown you repeatedly that they'll get to a certain spot, not be able to create enough offense, and then just break down a little bit too much in the defensive end, and then they bow out in the playoffs, perhaps earlier than they should have, or any other phrase you want to put in there. Ultimately, it is like that's an indication that the core is not all right. And when you go through multiple different runs with the same pillars of the team, offensively, defensively, and the goals aren't there, the breakdowns defensively are a couple more than you would like, and those couple of more lead to 2-on-1s or backdoor plays because the whoever it was just didn't have the stick wrapped up or wasn't fast enough or whatever. And those are the kinds of goals that lead to serious losses, and then you're golfing in May as opposed to continuing to play hockey. That's an indication that something in the core needs to change. The hesitation that I have is, they're going to win a bunch of games. They're going to be fun. They are one of the best, the top 10 teams in the sport. But when the core has shown you that when it comes down to the nitty gritty, when it comes down to the playoffs, they have shown that they cannot go over, above and beyond of getting that extra goal, stopping that extra 2-on-1, or stopping that extra 3-on-2, or stopping the 2-on-2 that somehow leads to a 2-on-1 because there's a player on the Rangers that likes to just stand there and chicken wing as opposed to actually playing defense, which is what happened in Game 6 against Florida. I'm sure you remember who it is. I don't have to tell you who it is. You can deduce who it is by the play. But these are the kinds of plays that lose you Stanley Cups. And these are the kinds of players that are still here. So I ask again, I'm not asking, I could ask you personally, Nick, but also just as an ethereal question of like, if this core has shown you that they can't tighten up and do the things that they need to do to get over the finish line, then how many more tries do you need for you to believe them is my question.
I mean, this gets to something that's a little more inside baseball-y type thinking, but are they trying to win the Stanley Cup? That's the eternal question. The general manager says they're trying to win the Stanley Cup, but at the same time, he's not making the moves requisite to win the Stanley Cup. Is it, let's make the playoffs and we're good enough that we can beat most teams and maybe one year will be the year? There are plenty of teams who have that approach. There are a lot of teams in the league who they just want to make the playoffs. They'll see what happens. The difference between, say, the Rangers and the Islanders is Rangers are a more talented team. So they can get in. They can beat the bad team in the first round pretty consistently. A good chunk of the time, they'll be competitive in that second round. It's always hairy in that second round. It's not easy, but they get through when they do. Yeah. And then they get to a conference final against like the real bad guys. And very quickly, it's, there's levels to this game. I can still vividly picture that 5-on-3 power play in 2015 where Marty St. Louis just fell and the Lightning went back the other way and scored and very quickly stormed and took control of that series. These moments are seared into your brain when you're this invested, when you think about, damn, they were that close, and specific things will pop into your head and you start to get, and I love the people who are like, oh, well, believe. I didn't believe until 19. I kept my belief. Yeah, you kept belief through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. I mean, I hate to be that guy, but at a certain point, you gotta call what it is. If I went into every single year honestly expecting the Mets to have a chance to win the World Series, I would have been institutionalized by now. You could say the same thing about the Knicks. You could say the same thing about the Giants at this point. You can probably say that about the Rangers at this point.
The game that Derrick Rose disappeared. I was at that game. Anthony Davis.
He was pushing on a pull door. He was
Anthony
trying.
Davis of the New Orleans Pelicans dropped 40 as the Knicks got destroyed, and everyone couldn't figure out where Derrick Rose was because no one knew.
They were calling the Knicks a super team. Them and Golden State. Word to Derrick Rose.
I was there. I was an experience. That's a game that was completely unmemorable for the most part. Obviously AD dropping 40, like that was big at the time, but like all of it was overshadowed by where the hell is Derek? Like where the hell is the starting point guard for the New York Knicks? The coach doesn't know. No one knows. Like what's going on? Like that was a you just had to be there kind of moment. That was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I can't do the blind fan thing at this point.
Yeah,
I understand that I have a neurosis that'll probably never be understood. That you could sit me down with psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, and they wouldn't understand why I care this much about this stupid hockey team. But
it makes two of us. That's why we're here.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to but you can't go into the year thinking, oh, this will be the year, because this team has been in existence going on 89 seasons. They have won 4 Stanley Cups in that window. They have won one Stanley Cup since America entered World War II. If you are walking into the season with the blind faith of, I love my favorite team, they're going to do it, I commend you. God bless you.
Yeah.
I wish I could do that.
Teach me how to do that.
Yeah, I wish I could. But the way I think about this is, like we said about 20 minutes ago, this team is good. The bar to win the Stanley Cup is great. What are the impediments between good and great? They are identifiable. They are easily identifiable. But the team is not taking the corrective action requisite with improving the team. So I'm going to err with a little bit more skepticism than most people will. I mean, the thing I will point to as why you should always ask more from your favorite team, the Rangers hadn't raised season tickets for the 4 years they were bad, from like 2017 to 2021. They've gone up 10 to 15% each year since then. It should not cost $120 to sit with the Billy Joel banner against the Sharks on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
There were games pre-pandemic, face value. I got tickets for a game against the Sharks, face value. And I want to say it was 2018 when the Rangers were very bad. Face value, they were $75. Those same tickets now, 8 years later, are $120. That's why you should ask for your team to be better. It is not whining when they consistently raise the prices of tickets without winning. You know, if the Celtics want to raise their season ticket prices after winning a championship, okay. If the Panthers want to raise their season ticket prices because they won the Stanley Cup, okay. Making the playoffs and losing in 7 games to the Devils, that is not a justification for raising season ticket prices.
My question to you is, would you rather the Rangers have a solid team but no visible flaws, and it would be harder to kind of figure out what the problem was, or for the problems to be, as the team is right now, I think pretty clear, and yet no action is being taken? Which is preferred?
I mean, the no clear flaws but not being able to get it done is at least like, you can just kind of explain it as like hockey bullshit, like the best team doesn't always win, etc. But the problem is the Rangers think they're the better team and they're not. Like the Rangers watched that series against Florida and said, we were right there. All we needed was one more bounce, when in reality, all of their goals were Barclay Goodrow, Alexi Lafreniere, Alex Wenberg, and one Trocheck, if I remember correctly, and then the Zibanejad shorthanded. At some point, you got to call a spade. And I'm not ready to say that there's no point, but...
No point in warm-ups.
No point in warm-ups. Hey, if the Rangers... finagle Braden Point. At this point, I'm doing the Lakers fan thing of just get me the best player.
Exactly.
Photoshop DeMar DeRozan.
We're the Lakers. Just everybody wants to come here, of course.
Photoshop DeMar DeRozan into a Rangers jersey. Fix the problem.
He could play center, surely.
I mean, Matt Rempe should be the Knicks' backup center next year, but
he could play the 4 easily.
At the very least, then again, I've seen hockey players shoot a basketball. Probably not for the best.
You just don't let him shoot the ball. Give him the rebounds, have him be the defensive guy, and then he'll just pass it to Brunson. Fine.
I mean, he's not good on his feet. That's the issue. He couldn't be a big man in basketball because he trips on ice and his job is to skate on ice. I can't imagine Matt Rempe running in a straight line. I know that shit sounds like an earthquake, him running in a straight line. That's a big boy. But that'll do it for this week's episode. Hopefully the nihilism hasn't killed your vibes entirely if you've made it through this far of the episode. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple or Spotify, please take an extra second, throw the show a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell so you get a notification whenever new content goes live. We're getting there. It's the first week of August. Actual hockey conversation is not terribly far away.
Yeah.
But until then...
Preseason's what, 6 weeks away?
Preseason's 6 weeks away. The first weeks of training camp are 4.5, 5 weeks away. We're getting there, but we do have to get through August. So we appreciate you bearing with us and our neurosis. We will talk to you guys next week.